In a pivotal moment in American history, a president makes a bold move that will affect the nation's present and its future. On March 2nd, 1917, Puerto Ricans become U.S. citizens. Puerto Rico is located about 1,000 miles southeast of Florida between Hispaniola and the Virgin Islands. The U.S. wins control of Puerto Rico in the Spanish-American War in 1898. In 1900, Congress creates a civil government on the island, and U.S. President William McKinley appoints a governor. World War I breaks out in 1914. The U.S. is initially neutral. A month before entering the war in 1917, President Woodrow Wilson signs the Jones-Shafroth Act, making Puerto Rico a U.S. territory and granting its residents statutory U.S. citizenship. This means that citizenship is imparted by statute rather than guaranteed by the Constitution. In 1917, the U.S. affords Puerto Ricans the right to refuse U.S. citizenship and maintain their Spanish or other citizenship. The act also includes a Bill of Rights and sets up a U.S.-style three-branch government. 4 congressional acts between 1927 and 1952 further define the nature of citizenship for Puerto Ricans. Stay tuned, because coming up, we'll learn more about Puerto Ricans in World War I and subsequent conflicts. We'll also learn a bit more about Puerto Rico's government. Check out my video from February 15th to learn more about how the U.S. gained control of Puerto Rico during the Spanish-American War. There's a link in the description. Also, don't forget to check out Today in History in my Teachers Paid Teachers store. There's a link in the description. So, in 1917, Puerto Rico has about 1.2 million inhabitants. As citizens, Puerto Ricans can enlist in the U.S. Army, but few choose to do so after gaining citizenship. President Wilson institutes the draft 2 months later in May 1917, and 236,000 Puerto Ricans register. 20,000 of them are drafted to serve during World War I. Some are sent to guard the Panama Canal, which is extremely important and which had just opened a few years earlier in 1914. Puerto Ricans of African descent are placed, however, in racially segregated units. Some of them fight on Europe's Western Front. 65,000 Puerto Ricans served during World War II. 61,000 serve in Korea, and 48,000 served during the Vietnam War. The 1917 Jones-Shafroth Act sparks a wave of immigration to the U.S. mainland. 42,000 Puerto Ricans migrate during the 1920s, mostly to New York. This mass migration inspires the hit Broadway musical West Side Story. Maria, I just met a girl named Maria. Sorry, got carried away, West Side Story. It's great. The U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Sonia Sotomayor, is, of course, of Puerto Rican descent, as both of her parents were born on the island. In 1951, Puerto Rican voters approve a new U.S. law granting the islanders the right to draft their own constitution. In March 1952, Luis Muñoz Marin, Puerto Rico's governor, proclaims Puerto Rico a freely associated U.S. Commonwealth under the new Constitution. The status becomes official in July of 1952. Today, Puerto Rico's governor and legislature are elected by the people. The governor and the U.S. president both possess the power to veto laws enacted by the legislature. Judges are chosen by the governor and appointed by the island senate. If this mostly sounds familiar, it's because it's mostly similar to the way U.S. state governments function. Of course, not counting the U.S. presidential veto power. But otherwise, it's pretty similar. Puerto Ricans, however, do not have voting representation in the U.S. Congress, nor can they vote in U.S. presidential elections, although they do play a role in determining the major party candidates through the presidential primary process. If you like what you've seen here today, please make sure to like and subscribe. And remember that you can find another Mr. Lewis video right here. Oh, and you can find that February 15th one that I mentioned earlier right here, as well as down in the description. Thanks again for watching.